Hurricane Harvey is due to strike the southern U.S. coastline late on Friday or the early hours of Saturday morning, with fears mounting it could be the worst storm to hit the mainland since Katrina in 2005. Wind speeds of up to 110 miles per hour are expected. The hurricane was declared Category 3 as it approached the mainland on Friday afternoon. The U.S. National Hurricane Center (NHC) warned that Harvey was rapidly intensifying. Mandatory evacuations were ordered for several cities on the Texas Gulf Coast. My urgent message to my fellow Texans is that if you live in a region where evacuation has been ordered, you need to heed that advice and get out of harm's way while you can. Texas Gov. Greg Abbott said in a televised address. He issued disaster declarations in 30 counties, saying the preemptive move would allow the state to quickly deploy resources for the emergency response effort. Forecasters also warned of a life-threatening storm surge as heavy rain was predicted along with the high winds. There could be as much as 30 inches of rain in some areas. With this system's intensity and slow motion, it is the worst of both worlds, John Tharp, a forecaster with Weather Decision Technologies in Norman, Oklahoma, told Reuters. There will be major impacts along the coast and inland with periods of prolonged rain. Officials in Houston, the biggest city in the path of the storm, said they did not anticipate issuing evacuation orders, but expected heavy rainfall to last up to 5 days. Houston will see close to 20 inches of rainfall, officials said in a statement. This is likely to cause dangerous flash flooding, and will cause area flooding throughout the entire Houston region. The mayor of the city of Corpus Christi said that his greatest concern was flooding, and advised people living in low-lying areas to evacuate. Elsewhere in Texas, the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office warned residents to beware of alligators that had been displaced by the storm. Expect them to be displaced, simply looking for higher ground. Leave alone until water recedes, it told residents on Twitter. I hope people will listen to forecasters when they say, beware of flash floods. Mayor Joe Maycomb said, flash floods can come quickly, and they can be deadly. The Driscoll Children's Hospital in Corpus Christi was flying at least 10 babies from its neonatal intensive care unit to Cook Children's Hospital in Fort Worth. A Cook spokeswoman said all of the babies were expected to arrive by early Friday. In Louisiana, where the storm was forecast to hover for many days and could deluge flood-prone New Orleans, Governor John Bel Edwards said he spoke with the president, who offered his full support. This is going to play out over the next week or so, Mr. Edwards told a news conference, which makes it particularly dangerous, because the longer it sits in one place, the more rain that it will drop. Mr. Edwards issued an emergency declaration for his entire state, as hundreds of boats were made ready for potential rescues, along with more than 500,000 sandbags to hold back floodwaters. New Orleans, which was devastated by Hurricane Katrina in 2005, was bracing for heavy flooding. Petrol prices surged to a 3-week high on Thursday as the hurricane threatened to strike oil refineries in the Gulf. Starting Thursday night, you could start to see the Harvey effect being factored into gas prices, said Patrick Dehan, an analyst with Gas Buddy. President Donald Trump tweeted a video of him being briefed on the hurricane and warned people to plan ahead. On Thursday night, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials moved detained immigrants housed in the projected path of Hurricane Harvey. Daniel Bible, the field office director for the San Antonio Enforcement and Removal Operations office said that the ICE detainees in the Port Isabel Detention Center in Port Isabel, Texas, were in the process of being moved temporarily to other facilities. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said too many people are staying put despite being urged to evacuate. He urged anyone with the ability to flee the Gulf Coast to do so, but stopped short of criticizing local officials who haven't ordered mandatory evacuations. With the hurricane only hours away, experts fear the time for evacuation has passed. State emergency officials have identified at least 8 counties and 7 cities that have issued mandatory evacuations. More than a dozen others are under voluntary evacuation. However, state officials said they had no estimates on how many people along the coast have heeded warnings to evacuate before Hurricane Harvey makes landfall. Residents of Rockport in Texas have been told to write their names and social security numbers on their arm. The advice has been given to people who ignored mandatory evacuation orders by the town's temporary mayor, Patrick Rios. This would enable the emergency services to identify bodies in the event of fatalities. We're suggesting if people are going to stay here, mark their arm with a Sharpie pen with their name and social security number, he said. We hate to talk about things like that, he said. It's not something we like to do, but it's the reality. People don't listen. Robert Rocha, fire chief at Corpus Christi, has told residents to stay inside and wait for help. People are going to suffer if they go out in this environment, he said. If we follow instructions and do what we are told to do, we can get through this. Emergency services are on standby, Mr. Rocha added. It is very difficult for firefighters and law enforcement to get out and do any kind of work. Hurricane Harvey has been upgraded to Category 4 as it bears down on the Texas coast. The center of the hurricane is about 50 miles east-southeast of Corpus Christi. Winds are strengthening. The eye of the storm could see wind speeds reaching 140 miles per hour. Brock Long, the FEMA administrator, has warned people who are in the path of the hurricane that the window for evacuation has passed. If you are in the area and you are going to get 6 to 10 feet storm surges, it is time to find some high ground, he said. Those in the area are in for a long haul, he added. This is going to be a marathon, because the storm is going to slow down before landfall and stay on top of Texas and Louisiana. This is going to be a multi-day event. It is going to be a significant disaster in the states of Texas and Louisiana, and people there are going to see their day-to-day activities disrupted for a very long time. The Carnival Corporation said that 3 of its cruise ships are unable to return to the port of Galveston, Texas, which has been closed ahead of Hurricane Harvey, Reuters has reported. 2 of the ships, the Carnival Freedom and the Carnival Valor, will head for New Orleans, where they will pick up fresh supplies. Passengers will have the option of disembarking there, but Carnival advised them to not do so and said the ships will return to Galveston as soon as feasible. A 3rd ship, the Carnival Breeze, will extend its stay in Cozumel, Mexico, and begin sailing back to Galveston this weekend, the company said. Staff working in air traffic control towers in the eye of the hurricane are being told to be ready to evacuate. The Federal Aviation Administration said towers in hurricane-prone areas are built to withstand storm damage, but should the winds prove too powerful, the FAA has said staff should evacuate the tower cabs, although in some cases they can work from lower levels. We prepare and protect air traffic control facilities along the projected storm path so we can quickly resume operations after the hurricane passes. Enabling flights to resume quickly is critical to support disaster relief efforts. The National Hurricane Center says Hurricane Harvey has strengthened to a Category 3 storm. Trump will go to Texas early next week in wake of Harvey, the White House has announced. A statement read, President Donald J. Trump continues to closely monitor Hurricane Harvey and the preparedness and response efforts of state, local, and federal officials. Today, the president received a briefing from Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, Administrator Brock Long, Acting Secretary of Homeland Security Elaine Duke, his Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor Thomas P. Bossert, and his Chief of Staff John F. Kelly. Yesterday, the president spoke with Governors Greg Abbott of Texas and John Bel Edwards of Louisiana and committed to providing assistance as appropriate. This storm will likely be very destructive for several days. The president encourages people in the path of this dangerous storm to heed the advice and orders of their local and state officials. The president's highest priority is the safety of the public and of first responders. Those who ignore evacuation orders could be putting both themselves and first responders in danger. We encourage all Americans in the affected areas to be prepared, including by visiting ready.gov, which provides preparedness plans and important links to information. Coldplay was forced to postpone a concert in Houston scheduled for Friday night as the most powerful hurricane in a dozen years bore down on Texas, the band said. Houston is not directly in the path of the storm, but it is expected to receive up to 20 inches of rain. We really wanted to play tonight, but sitting here all together watching the news about the storm, we feel that we can't ask anyone to put their safety at risk, the band said on Twitter. So, sadly, we will have to postpone. Details about rescheduling and refunding would be published later, the band said. Texas Gov. Greg Abbott is warning people that Hurricane Harvey is going to be a very major disaster. Mr. Abbott said he had asked President Donald Trump for a federal disaster declaration. The mayor of the popular Texas Gulf Coast city of Galveston says the city is expected to be inundated with water from Hurricane Harvey. Mayor James Yarborough said during a news conference on Friday that Hurricane Harvey is expected to flood downtown streets. A storm surge of 2 feet to 4 feet of water is expected to inundate much of the city, while up to 8 feet could cover other areas. Storm surge is an abnormal rise of water above the normal tide generated by a storm. He says a leading concern is that high tide will occur on Saturday morning, shortly after Harvey makes landfall, and the water is not expected to recede for 3 or 4 days. Galveston was lashed by Hurricane Ike in 2008, and Yarborough says the difference is that Ike passed through quickly while Harvey will linger and drop substantial rainfall. He says utility lines and other infrastructure have been upgraded since 2008 to withstand a Category 5 hurricane. Harvey is forecast to become a Category 3 by the time it makes landfall.